Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. Joining me today, we have three esteemed guests. We've got Neil Harper, head coach of the University of Arkansas. We've got Vanessa Herman, senior at Arkansas. And we've got Anna Hopkin, one of the most decorated athletes in Arkansas swim history. Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Good. Good to be on.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, doing pretty good.
It's great to have everyone on. We're going to cover a myriad of swimming related topics today. First off, Arkansas is just coming off the Tennessee invite. Neil, let's start with you. What would you make of this weekend in the Razorbacks performance?
Really happy. I think this is something we, after watching great stuff this summer, being inspired, obviously, Anna was involved in Olympic success, and Vanessa, swimming at Wave 2 U.S. trials. After that's all over, then you start to plan for the next year. And we got together with our leaders and our group and really did some soul searching and talked about what do we do to be better next year, even better. So one of the things was to continue over the summer, have a great fall, and try to see if we can get as many qualified at the Tennessee invite. The reason we went there is it's a fast pool, but also SECs is going to be there in February. So we've got a young team, and it was good experience for them to go and see how it was and how they performed, so that when they go back there in the winter, they're kind of ready to go and they're familiar. So very happy. I think we've got at least 4 that have made it to NCAAs already. We broke 3 school records. We've got relays that are in the mix, ranked top 10. So the ladies did well. The atmosphere was great, and we're sort of back refocusing. U.S. Open next week, and then obviously Thanksgiving break, U.S. Open, and then on to finals, and then getting a break, and then on to next year.
Yeah, Vanessa, what was your take on the weekend? Especially just how do you feel about your own racing and about the team's racing?
Yeah, it was a very good weekend overall. It was very nice to be able to compete in that pool. It's a very different atmosphere. I've never been to that pool. So it was very fun for me to be able to get involved in a new environment and kind of figure out what I need to do for my races. And then I think the team did amazing. It's been an amazing year so far. We've come so far from the summer. We put a lot of work in. We've just kind of been grinding throughout the summer, having a lot of fun while doing it too.
And then switching gears a little, Anna, you've been racing overseas in the ISL, first in Naples, obviously in the regular season, and now in Eindhoven. Can you give us a report from Eindhoven? How has the postseason been going for you so far?
Yeah, it's going well. It's obviously been like a different start to the season than usual. Obviously, coming off Olympics, a lot of people would take quite a long break, whereas we were kind of straight into ISL and sort of trying to race off not loads of training after Olympics. And so that was quite a different experience. And then going back after Naples and getting a really good training block in, and then coming to Eindhoven, it's almost a different challenge trying to race fast when you've just done a hard block of training. So it's definitely been just about building through each match and trying to get used to racing again and improving sort of tactics. And I've gotten quick for each race, which I think is the main goal really. And obviously I think being on DC, it was a big sort of goal of ours to actually make it to Eindhoven, which we obviously did. And we won the final death match in Naples, which was a pretty big thing for us. And that was an incredible achievement, and the atmosphere was amazing. And so I think we've all, as a team, come into Eindhoven, definitely as the underdogs, but it's kind of just given us a bit of freedom to just see what we can do, really.
I feel like a lot of people have made this comparison, but I'm curious on your take on it. What do you feel like you gained from racing in the college system and the NCAA system that carries over into ISL? You know, obviously the ISL format kind of gets compared to that dual meet format. Do you feel like that was applicable for you heading into the ISL?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the college system, it gives you that multiple race experience in sort of a 2-hour session, which is quite tough. And ISL is pretty tough too, having back-to-back races, and especially the skins, which I'm not sure I'll ever be the best at, but it's good things. And hopefully the more I do it, the better I get. But being kind of a all-out sprinter, having that sort of multiple 50s with barely any rest in between is pretty tough. But I think the college experience, all the dual meets and racing when I'm tired, has definitely given me sort of, I guess it's prepared me quite well for this.
And Anna, can you recall the toughest race you've ever swam in a dual meet?
Probably the 200 free, just because I don't really like it, but Neil would make me do it. And I think I didn't mind the 2 free when I was like tapered and feeling fresh, but doing it at a dual meet when you're tired and you're just in your regular swimsuit, it is tough. It's a hard race.
Vanessa, same question. What is the toughest race you swim at dual meets?
I probably have to say 200 breaststroke. Mainly because it's in the middle of the meet, and so usually we'll have like a slight dive break, so you come off like a 10-minute break and you have to get back in and do a 200, which is a little hard to do coming off of like the 100 breaststroke, because it's a little different component. You have to be a little bit more longer, and you have to think of race strategy is a little bit different with the 200, so that is probably the hardest one for me.
Neil, from your perspective as a coach, what do you think the toughest race to, race well in season at a dual meet is?
I think as a backstroker in college, I always used to say that the 200 back was a killer. But as in all my years in coaching, I've realized that for freestylers, the 2 or the 5 is a killer, and then for the breaststrokers, the 200 breast, for the IMers, the 400 IM, for the flyers, the 200 fly. So I think you can't really say, because all those strokers are good at that stroke, but the 200 or whatever distance it is just pushes them to the limit, because in short course, you don't get to take a 50 off, unless you're way ahead, you're racing. And I think that's the thing that you were, alluding to earlier, was that, it really toughened Anna up coming out and being in dual meets where we needed her to step up, and we needed her to like go in a 200 free, unrested, hard week of weights and a hard week of training, and sometimes take it on the chin, take it on the chin by, someone that maybe wasn't as fast as her at the end of the year, but that's the way it is. And we did what we had to do. And in the end, it worked out just fine.
So I had the pleasure of coming down to Fayetteville a week and a half ago, about maybe 2 weeks now, and filming a practice. It was right before the Tennessee invite. I'm excited to get that out in the coming weeks on SwimSwam. So stay tuned for that. But, I got to see you guys train, and you guys were talking about this post-Olympic year. You're figuring out how to get better, how to move forward. For you as a coach, Neil, what did you have any reflections, or did you say, okay, maybe this is how we can do things different, not only coming off of the Olympic Games, but just coming off of kind of the pandemic, right, where we had this 18-month period of very, very different circumstances than we're used to?
I think, we realized that maybe getting some outside help with some team building. We had like the Marines come in from the program and really push our individuals and team is in a limit in areas where they were kind of destined to fail. And we really learned a lot about ourselves and organization and communication and the team itself, that the coaches had to kind of sit back and watch. And it was really tough. And I think they realized after that like, God, if we can go through this, we can definitely go through a season. We can definitely go through a practice. And I think one of the things that we kind of reflect on, and one of the great things about today's podcast is that you've got two individuals here that, for me, are two of the most coachable athletes and coachable swimmers I've coached. I've coached a lot of great swimmers, and I've been very fortunate for that. But one of the reasons that, Anna probably came in and probably her best converted 200 free time was like 150, 151. And before 2 years were up, before COVID hit, she went 142. And I think part of that became, she was open. She was like, what do you want me to do? Okay, I'll try to do that, And I think for that, and then certainly for Vanessa, I mean, Vanessa came out of high school, like 103 and 216, 217. And now she's going 59 low and 208 and Olympic trials. And the credit to them is that you don't always get swimmers like this. You don't always get student athletes that are coachable, that like, okay, I mean, Anna was on a fast track and she said, look, I've got 2 years. And she was coming off of Commonwealth Games where, the Campbell sisters did really well. And there was a big gap, but she was open. And instead of being a diva, I mean, she was open to like, okay, what can you do for me? And I'll try to do it. And so that's why these two have been, great examples to the Arkansas program, is that that they infused energy with people around them. And they were basically saying like, hey, if this is good for them, then this is good for me. So that's been the kind of thing that we've gone from, is that if you're lucky, you get to do 4 years of college. I mean, some are getting to do a 5th year now, but you get 4 years and it goes real quick. And so unfortunately, by the time Anna got over here, it was just a year and a half, but she achieved some amazing things, and it vaulted her into world championships and Olympic success. And so it helped, but with where we are this year, I think that's where we're at, is that like, you get one day, you get one practice. This just, stay in your lane, focus on what you can do, motivate those around you. Everyone get on each other's bus, cheer each other on, and get the most out of today's practice. Let's not worry about tomorrow or what happened yesterday. And I think that's been a big thing for us going forward, and why we've been kind of positive and successful.
Great answer, Neil. Thank you for that. So Vanessa, in that same vein, you came into Arkansas, obviously as a freshman. You've been there for a few seasons now. Can you kind of take us through that journey, especially coming off of the summer you had with going to Olympic trials, and getting to experience a meet like that, which is pretty unique in terms of swimming competitions. Heading into this season, how do you feel like you've shifted, and how do you feel like that team has shifted, especially since you arrived in Fayetteville?
Yeah, so I'm from North Dakota, and swimming isn't the biggest sport out there. So I was really coming to a very different atmosphere. I was very excited to come down here and join a team that Neil was really positive about from the moment I met him. He was like, okay, I want to create this team. I want some great athletes. And when Coach Anthony, who was the assistant coach at the time, was talking to Neil, he was like, hey, we really want to get this girl because she really gets down and works. And so I was extremely grateful for them to bring me down here and really transform me into the swimmer I am. I'm very appreciative of my home coaches because they've got me to where I am now too, just to help set me up for what I've been able to do. And being able to come down here and train with this team has been amazing. Every day is a new opportunity, and the coaches are always there willing to push us. And when I got my first trial cut, I honestly didn't quite process that I did get my trial cut. I was just a little bit out of it. So that was a really exciting moment for me. And then I was just ready to keep training and get ready for trials. And then trials got pushed back. So then I was a little confused on what was going on there. And then last season was a great season for me. I was really excited to just swim coming off of, the whole COVID deal. I was swimming in a lake at home in the middle of April, which is really, really cold.
In North Dakota?
Yeah, in North Dakota. I was in a wetsuit in the only non-iced over lake possible. So it was a bit of a cold experience, but it was a lot of fun. And then I was just excited to race. I kind of realized my love for swimming again because I kind of hit a weird point sophomore year. I was just tired, needed that. I think COVID helped getting that little break. So then I remember how much I loved the sport and how much I loved to race. And when we went to Des Moines, Iowa for US Open, I got my second trials cut. And that's when they kind of did the wave 1, wave 2 cuts. And so that's when I got my A cut, I think, or my wave 1 cut. I can't remember anymore. But I was just kind of on this roll. And that's the next week I hit my 208. And I was just kind of like, what is going on? Because I was just going out and having fun and racing. And that was just kind of my whole thought process of last year. It's just, I just got to go out, have fun, do what I love. And everything's been working out so far.
Again, great answer. I can't believe you swam in a North Dakota lake, but that's kudos to you, Vanessa. So then, Anna, you kind of talked about your post-Olympic experience, what you're doing with the ISL now, how you've kind of gotten right back into racing. So your time at Arkansas, again, was cut short because of COVID. And then I talked to you during the pandemic. But it was kind of Arkansas, pandemic, and then basically right to the Olympics. Can you talk about how that your shortened time at Arkansas kind of led you to the Olympic success you ended up having in Tokyo?
Yeah, I mean, that whole, obviously, NCAA's been cancelled experience, and because I was obviously needed to get back home because at that point, Olympic trials were potentially still going ahead. I think we all kind of knew in the back of our minds that it probably wouldn't be, but I obviously needed to get to the right country just in case that was my opportunity to make the Olympics. So it was kind of a bit of a whirlwind, a few days, kind of NCAA's getting cancelled and then booking flights home and packing up all my stuff from like the last year and a half and getting that all home, and then kind of train for a week in Loughborough, which I think obviously had I finished my time at Arkansas, was hoping to obviously do Olympics 2020, then the plan would probably have been to move to Loughborough post-Olympics. But obviously with the pandemic, it was kind of like, I need to find somewhere to train now. And so there was that transition to Loughborough, obviously earlier than was planned. But we pretty much went into lockdown very soon, like a week after I'd been training in Loughborough anyway, and then everything got cancelled and we were sort of making do with training at home, and I had a endless pool in my garden that I was training in. So probably not as cold as Vanessa's lake. Still a bit of a strange place to swim, but had that for a little while. And then I think the biggest challenge for me was obviously starting in a new program sort of around May, June, which is usually quite an odd time to switch programs. And obviously then it was a year out from Olympics. It's also another bit of uncertainty as to changing programs at that point. But I think having Neil and my now coach Mel, who have a really great relationship and they have a very similar mindset. They're both very, very motivational, very positive, all about like athlete input and kind of getting a balance between what's needed and also what's like, what do I feel good doing and everything. So obviously Neil, I think Mel's idea was to have a lot of input from Neil in the initial program and then just gradually sort of transition it into what is her typical program. But obviously there's still a lot of influence from Neil's program in what I do now. And I still train short course yards quite a lot. We have a turning board that we put in just for me. So I do still swim short course yards. So there's still a lot of input from the US system, which I think has been why I was able to be so successful at the Olympics, because I think I was already at that stage ready for 2020. And it was more about maintaining that for another year. I was ready to go for trials. I was ready to go for NCAAs in 2020, and obviously all that got cancelled. So it was just about resetting and trying to maintain that and then build on that into 2021, which obviously all worked out fine in the end. There's definitely a few ups and downs, but definitely the sort of communication from Neil and Mel together helped that a lot.
Okay, that's fascinating. You train yards at Loughborough. Why is that? What inspired you to be like, you know what, I need to train yards?
I think it was just more Mel. Like, obviously, I'd been training yards my entire time at Arkansas. We train yards until pretty much NCAAs, and then we'd switch to long course. And I think it was more just to keep the familiarity, really, of what I'd been doing, and also it works quite well. Like most of my group are guys, and so a lot of the time, if I'm doing yards and they're doing meters short course, then it all kind of works out, and we all like finish at the same times, and I can do yards when they're doing meters, and it kind of just makes the whole thing a bit more comparable, I guess. So it's quite nice to be able to race them doing yards, and obviously I've done a lot of yards, so it's kind of second nature to me, really.
I'm also curious because, like you said, you were with Neil for less than 2 years, and then you were with Mel for less than 2 years before the Olympics. I'm guessing you had a coach prior to Neil. I mean, what was it like having two really quick turnarounds for coaches? Do you feel like you were able to soak in as much, or do you feel like maybe in an ideal world you would have gotten a little more time with each one?
I think over my swimming journey, I've realized I'm very adaptable, and I think ever since I started doing my undergrad at Bath, I think I pretty much changed coach every year at Bath, because I started with one coach, then I moved up a group, then I went on placement to train in a completely different club, and then I went back to a coach I'd already had, and then I moved to the US, and then I moved to Loughborough. And so there's been a lot of changes, and I feel like I've adapted very well to each one, but probably the most important part of it was just the communication with each individual coach and building a good relationship with each coach. And so that, like, Neil still talks to my coach Dave, who I trained with on placement year, and Neil still talks to Mel, and so there's still that communication between a lot of my coaches, which has made all of my transitions pretty easy. So I think that's probably the most important part, is everyone just being transparent about everything.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm sure it helps that you're adaptable. It's a lot of coaching changes, though. But,
a lot of input, though. Like, you get a lot of advice from different people. So I've just taken like advice from all over, and everyone's sort of given me different input, which is great.
I'm surprised you can intake and process all of that input, but that's, obviously it has worked out in your favor. So Vanessa, I'm curious about your coaching change. Petra Martin is now on deck in Arkansas. I'm curious as to what you've thought of her coaching style and the impact she's had this season with your team.
Well, I think Petra's great. When Neil introduced us to Petra, I was a little like, oh boy, because I had, growing up, our head coach was from France, and so I'm like, okay. Her accent kind of gave me not want to say PTSD, but she reminded me a lot of our old coach. And so when she first said push-ups, I was like, oh boy, she means business. And so I think Petra's great. She and I really hit it off. We work well together. And anytime that I'm kind of in a rut or and just need to not feeling so great today, she's like, okay, let's adjust it. Let's keep going. Let's switch it up. I think last week I didn't do breaststroke for 3 days because it was not feeling great. So she was like, let's do some fly, let's do some free. We'll change it up because we know that works well for me. And she and I just have a really great connection. I've always had a really great connection with all my coaches. So it's important for me to have a good connection and just trust all of my coaches.
Neil, same question. What do you feel like Petra has brought to the coaching deck? Again, I got to see her and you in action in Fayetteville, and my favorite part about her was that she recommended the grilled cheese restaurant that was that was mind blowing to me. Yeah. Yes, it was so good. But back to swimming, Neil. Yeah, what do you feel like Petra has brought, especially for you as a head coach?
Well, I think the thing is, it's trust. I've known Petra for a long time. I remember when she swam at Maryland, and I was the coach at Florida State. And you watch athletes and you see how they deal with their teammates and how inspirational they are. And then I followed her career of coaching, and obviously watched how she progressed and how she went from an assistant coach to a head coach. And anytime you have the opportunity to have a head coach as one of your assistants, and it's someone that you trust, you basically have two head coaches. And so I trust her. And she will sometimes come out with some great suggestions. I'll throw some things at her. She'll say, oh yeah, what do you think about this? And then we'll go backwards and forwards. And it's just finally, I think in coaching, what we really need is trust and people that we know are gonna not just agree with us all the time. Obviously it's a moving piece. And she comes in with all her years of experience as a swimmer. A swimmer that swam in Europe, swam at World Championships, and then has coached at all the levels as well. So it's great. We have only a women's program, so we need all the help we can get in terms of coaches, and so the quality easily outweighs the quantity. And so we work well together. We have fun. We live in the same neighborhood. Her kids, Paige and I, we go hang out with them. So. I think that's part of it is that you incorporate family into the business. And at the same time, you have someone that's not afraid to call you out or not afraid to bring up something, this is what we've done or I like to do in the past. What do you think? And we just throw ideas and throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And I think that's what's good is that, at Arkansas this year, we flip-flopped, we coached. 1 week I would coach the uppers and she would coach the lowers, and then we'd flip flop the next week. And that way everyone gets to be coached by both of us. And I think that anything that I might miss, she'll catch, and anything she might miss, I'll catch. And so we're pretty tough, especially, kind of A-type people where we want things done a certain way. And I think, again, that's one of the things coming back to, flattery is everything, but these two on here, when we made suggestions, when we made thoughts, they wanted to succeed so bad that they would be like, yes, these two came and watched video. I remember hours and hours of sitting down with Anna, just, with her schedule in graduate school. And we were able to just go over and watch her video, watch her race video, watch video that we took at practice that day and just make adjustments. And I think, and Vanessa will always come by the coach's office here and say, hey, do you have the video from my race this past weekend? So when you have that, not only are they coachable, but they're like Anna now, a professional athlete. They put their trade first. They both do really well in school. And then everything else comes second to those things, swimming and school. So I think that's the thing about having someone like Petra is that, I know I can fully walk off the deck and go recruit, and the program is in perfect hands. And obviously we have been hitting the road recruiting and we've done real well. So things are good, and we're having fun, and we're having the success in the pool. So we'll keep moving.
Again, great answer. Vanessa, I want to go back to something you mentioned. You said Petra didn't have you do breaststroke for 3 days, even though that's your primary stroke. You did some fly, you did some free. I felt like when I was there, you guys did a lot of different things. Just within a single practice, there were all 4 strokes. There was a really high blend of just equipment, strokes, doing sculling, doing kicking, swimming. There's just kind of everything. So Vanessa, what do you find the value of that variety in a day-to-day practices for you as a swimmer?
Yeah. So growing up, my club coaches always did a variety of different things, and so I was used to it. And when I came to Arkansas, all my coaches, I've just kind of told them, hey, I can do anything. I like to mix it up. I can't do the same thing. Otherwise, I don't feel like it works well for me. And so when Petra came in, she knew that. I didn't even really have to tell her that. She just knew it. And she would just throw a set at me, and I'd be like, okay, let's go do it. And she'll mix it up with me every single day. And when you were here, I can't remember exactly what we were doing, but that's a normal afternoon practice for us where we have multiple different things going on, because it kind of keeps us a little bit more focused and we pay attention to things a little bit more better. And then she really likes to, sometimes with breaststroke, she'll do a complete 180 and have us go and do something else and then come back. Because with like underwaters and stuff, it's a little bit different. And I think that's one of my favorite things about Petra is like she will just randomly switch up the set on you, and you just have to pay attention to be focused. So it's a lot of fun, and it works out for me.
Well, what I will say is that, you know, Coleman, when you came, that was one of those where if you look at it, you're like, wow, this is chaos. But it's organized chaos. We and the swimmers know what they're doing. And Anna can remember, typically with COVID, we kind of separated the groups a little bit so that we had 10 in each group. And the uppers would lift first and then come down and swim. So an hour of lift and an hour and swim. And the lowers would swim first and then go lift. But typically on a day when we lift, Monday, Wednesday, Friday afternoons, it's a power day. It's a resistance day. So we do throw the kitchen sink out, and we'll do power racks. We'll get like parachutes out. We'll have like mitts. We'll have socks on. We'll really deprive them of their feel, or we'll really have a lot of resistance, whether it's parachutes or sponges, and then take them off after they feel slow and they're really having to work it, and then go off the blocks or do a last 25 and they feel great. So I can tell you that there were several of those days where, Anna didn't feel too good about wearing a sponge or having a parachute on or having a full rack on the power rack and having to swim out. But when we took that stuff off, they went fast, and it was confidence, and we carried that through. So I think that's one of the things about why we throw stuff at them, is that they are adaptable. And I think if you're a swimmer, you don't like just swimming up and down for 2 hours. You need variety. You need to be challenged. And, there's a method to the madness. And I think that they see the success and know that, like, hey, coming from the weight room, I'm going to be a little sore. But like, if I translate that into good feel, good technique, and going fast, then it all makes sense.
I forget who it was, but there was a swimmer when I was there who had Anna's old sponge, and she was frustrated because it kept breaking.
Well, there's a story to that. I think there were about 4 or 5 old sponges that's got Anna's name on it, and mysteriously hold it up and say, like, it's broken, or there are several sponges with AEH, her initials. And this one, I think Emily had it that day, and it was a AEH3, the prototype. And of course, the slip knot slipped out, and Anna used to pull that quite a bit. But I will say, when you shove, I remember being at NCAA's her first year at Austin, and she was warming up, and the sponge was there. So it was kind of part of her putting herself together and making sure that she had a little bit of resistance and she had her technique and feel going. So those things live on, and we've gone on to some other stuff too, but those things are still around, and the legacy of Anna lives on.
Anna, care to comment on having 5 sponges?
Well, I feel like the more Neil added, the more it was likely to break, because the string could just not resistance. So I'm glad it wasn't just me. Neil kept saying I was the one breaking it, but it's the sponge's issue, not my issue. So I've still got the original, so that the original was always the best and still works. So
She's still got her sponge from Arkansas. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anna, I have one last question for you. I am curious. Again, we talked about, having all these different coaches, getting all this different input. How do you balance that for when you're in the thick of the ISL playoffs like you are right now, especially with one match left to go before the ISL final? How do you manage, or how do you balance creating your own workouts versus having a coach write you workouts when you've only got 3-4 days between racing and racing?
yeah, I think I definitely found it quite hard in Naples. I mean, we had a bit more time in Naples between matches, but because we were coming straight off Olympics, and obviously like Mel was still on holiday, a lot of coaches were still on holiday, a lot of athletes were still taking a break from Olympics, and we were kind of just getting back into it. And I didn't really know what I was doing, I was kind of just turning up to sessions and asking around, like, what are you doing today? Kind of jumping with you guys. And that worked really well. And it was nice to kind of train with different people, do different people's sessions, just because, I mean, I was like fresh off a couple of weeks break. And so it was just nice to do different things. But I think coming off Naples and having 4 weeks of solid training with Mel, I thought it was quite important to just have a very structured program with Mel here. So she's been writing my sessions and I've been calling with her every week so she can kind of debrief after the match, see how I'm feeling. Like after match 1, I wasn't super happy with how I swam. And so we just had a discussion about my training sessions the following week, just to lighten it up a bit, bring the gym down a bit, just sort of try and get a bit of that twitch back in training and add a bit of more fast stuff. And so I think it's more important for me right now to just have that constant communication with my main coach. Obviously, we have coaches on DC that can time and things, but since I'm kind of properly back into training now, it's more important for me to have that kind of stability of what I know.
Makes total sense. And that obviously, as we mentioned, it seems like it's working for you so far. Anna, Neil, Vanessa, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with us today about Arkansas, about swimming, about Fayetteville. We've got just a couple minutes left. Any parting thoughts from anyone before we sign off today?
Well, I wanted to say that, you know, what you guys do and bringing things like this and just interesting stuff. Swimming, when you're within it, it gets the perception of it's mundane, it's boring, it's tedious, it's, you know, same old routine. And as we're finding out, I think, you know, it is what you make of it. And, you know, so we're talking about, you know, Anna and she may be in the warm up pool at the Olympic Games, or she may be warming down in between, you know, one day of ISL and the next day, or whether it's Vanessa, you know, getting ready for the last day at the Tennessee Invite, or just, you know, the day that you came in. You know, you just have to go with it. And I think that part of it, and for all those budding swimmers out there, is that, you know, it is what you make of it. And you know, look at your glasses being half full rather than half empty. You know, it's you make of it what it is. And, you know, if you do that, you'll enjoy the day that you're in, engage, and be positive around everyone. And I think that's the thing to be learned here, is that, like, we take stuff too seriously. And I think that, you know, it's life and death. And when you have fun with it, as these two young ladies have done, you can have a lot of fun and you can really do some amazing things. So that's all I would say, is that, like, you know, the fact that you're doing this now, hopefully a lot more people will know a different side to Anna and a different side to Vanessa, and watch them and watch the ISL and watch the NCAA championships and the SECs and know that, you know, we were all together, but now, you know, we're going forward and we're going to just have fun doing it and just enjoy the sport we're in.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.